The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Welcome to the podcast on Thursday, the 22nd of April, 2021. On the podcast today, Vadim Alexandre, Head of Healthcare, SP Angel, discusses Cambridge Cognition as COG ticker, and they discuss how Microsoft are getting into their space by acquiring a company, and also mentions IXICO as well, because they're in the same kind of sector. Plus, as always, at the end of the podcast, I have two very important lists for you. They are the top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours, and the top 5 most read RNSs. And you can check out lists on the front page of voxmarkets.co.uk. Plus, you'll see lots of content. There's an article there on INS. There's one, in fact, there's 2 videos actually. Paul Hill's face staring at me. One is chatting to Andy Brough. That's a very good interview. I listened to that yesterday. Fund manager for Schroders. Also, Jamie Constable's a new one there. He's chief economist, N+1 Singer. So worth checking that out. There's an article there on Avacta, the final results, and lots of other stuff. Let me just check out the COVID-19 index. Biggest rise of the day. It's Biotrol has some results out, of course, up 15% to 7 pence. Biggest faller, Your Gene Health, down 3.39% to 14.25 pence. Check that out at voxmarkets.co.uk.
Vox Markets is an online community of investors that runs a free mobile and desktop platform that allows you to track news and updates about any UK-listed company, offering RNS push notifications, detailed charts, pricing data, and much more. Find out more at voxmarkets.co.uk/app.
And joining me on the podcast right now is Vadim Alexandre, Head of Healthcare, SP Angel. You all right, Vadim?
Yeah, good. How are you, Justin?
Good. So every Wednesday I do a webinar with my sort of Share Pickers Investment Club, and it's a good club, and we help each other out. It's a chat group, and week before last, I take questions, all that stuff, and we did knock some stuff around. But I got admonished by one of the members by not buying into Cambridge Cognition. I said, I know, but I missed it. When Vadim started talking about it, over a year back now, I looked at it. I remember him saying it's going to be profitable. I thought, what? Have I missed this? The market cap was right and everything. And then it's one of those things, isn't it? You've got to have a system. With you, I suppose, you're more niche because you only look at medical, small cap maybe. But I look at tech, which is a bit wider, of course. But you've got to have a system. Otherwise, you start, forgetting about stocks. I've got a system. Well, I always had a system, but it's sometimes one slips the net. And unfortunately, the one that slips the net, of course, you hear about is the one that goes up. Because the ones that slip the net, you don't hear. They go down. You don't mind. But it's the ones, and Cambridge Cognition, fair play, keeps on delivering. Like you say, last time we talked about it, it's gone up again from like £1 to 140. So what's driving this?
So you and I spoke about this 2 weeks ago, and it was exactly, you've got it. It went up another 40%. It's come off a bit. I think it's about 130, 128 today.
Yeah.
But it is always hard, as we say, to buy these stocks. But this is the one that has just kept on marching ahead, and it continues to do so. A bit of news that was interesting in this area is that it's not directly related, but it's related to the whole area of digital technologies in healthcare, and that's what they provide in the area of cognition to help drug developers develop drugs for areas of brain cognition that are brain degeneration, for example, like Alzheimer's disease or Huntington's disease. They help in.
In fact, you know what? So before you start, there's a very good fact there from the ONS saying now, the first month in a long time, COVID is not the main issue, not the main cause of death in adults in the UK, and it is dementia. So it's obviously a huge area, Yeah.
Dementia is a huge area. That's why drugs for Alzheimer's disease, that's the holy grail. If we can solve that or manage that better, we will save the healthcare system huge amounts of money and alleviate a huge amount of suffering. It is a major issue for a tier of our society that is quite a large tier of our society. So, there is a major issue there. There are fixes proposed in terms of drugs in the pipeline, and that's what Cambridge Cognition is involved. They help with companies assessments of their drugs in patients in clinical trials. Okay, so this is what their services provide. Okay, what's happened though but the broader area is digital healthcare. So it's the area of anything where that meets that combines the two areas of technology and healthcare. And when I say technology, I mean digital technology, so software companies, etc. Okay, the big news this week, or within the last 2 weeks, that I think had some read across to Cambridge Cognition, because it did to others like IXICO and other companies, was this big acquisition of Microsoft of a company called Nuance. Okay, and they moved into the area of AI and healthcare. Nuance, they do a lot of things, but one thing they do is they help, for example, doctors transcribe notes. So their AI software helps, it's like a speech recognition technology that allows those notes to get transcribed quickly. And as you might imagine, it's actually quite a big bottleneck in the whole, in workflows in medicine. Doctors need to stop and then write their notes down. This is a company that facilitates that and improves that substantially. Mm-hmm. So much so that Microsoft bought it for, I think it was something like nearly $20 billion. So it was a big acquisition to see. The key point, though, the main read across is to see tech moving into healthcare, okay, like this, and acquiring its way into healthcare. And I'm not suggesting that Microsoft's going to buy Cambridge Cognition, but my main point is that the interest is there for these healthcare digital solutions. You see what I mean? Yeah. And one of their products, in the case of Cambridge Cognition, the product they're launching is indeed a voice analysis service. So one way you can assess cognition in patients is to assess. Look, I'm not an expert in the area of voice recognition or assessing cognition, in the voice, but it is one of the biomarkers of people, say for example with dementia, in the way how their speech degenerates. Okay, so this is an area they're in. And I just think that you're going to see more and more interest in these areas, and all these companies like Cambridge Cognition, like IXICO. There are several others that are, I just think, finally getting recognized for overlapping that area of technology and healthcare.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does validate. When you see the big companies like, Microsoft getting involved in that area, it wouldn't be huge. There wouldn't be a lot of upside there. They wouldn't get involved otherwise, would they? I mean, because big companies need something to move the market, of course. And there's a huge area of undiscovered, untapped, maybe an area there. And so, it validates. Whenever you see any big company, buying up or aligning with smaller companies, you realize the smaller company's got something,
Correct, exactly. And it's this area of digital healthcare, digital technologies in healthcare that are now, that gap is being blurred, if you like, between the two areas of tech and healthcare. And a big acquisition, one such as this, where you recognize brand name like Microsoft stepping into the space, is interesting, and I think it starts to reverberate in the health tech community.
Yeah, absolutely.
It certainly has. I mean, another stock that's kind of responded as well in the small cap AIM community is IXICO. It's seen a big bounce. It could be a lot of things, right? I'm not suggesting the share price is just that, but I find it's not a coincidence in the last couple of weeks that we've seen this bounce in several of these companies. Other areas that use another particular area in this space is AI in healthcare. This is what Nuance is, this company that was acquired by Microsoft. A company in that space is Renalytix, which has been a huge success on AIM. Renalytix has gone up, 10 times since its listing. Yeah. So another AI company in healthcare.
Marvelous stuff. Yeah, it's very interesting. And just look at the chart there. That chart of IXICO, that one day it dropped off 40%. It went from, it opened at 105. It closed at 64. And now it's at 83. It's right in the middle there. So, it's making its way back.
You see the recovery, right? So that's, I think you and I discussed this probably about 2 months ago or a month and a half. Or it wasn't that long. It was right after that collapse. We had a quick chat about IXICO. And where IXICO, I think, can recover quickly, and this is, I think, some of this read across from this Nuance acquisition and Microsoft, is that IXICO has a lot of work with data, right? So they are a data company essentially, and that has huge value. What I think IXICO doesn't, or what has been underappreciated about IXICO historically, is that in particular, a lot of the focus has been on revenue generation, and that's, as with any business, that should be the primary focus. They've had a stumble on one of their contracts as one of their top clients, which led to this share price, a decline recently. Which is unfortunate, but the company underneath it all is a robust business. But more importantly is, I think, this data component. It's all starting to get recognized by the market that a lot of these smaller companies have huge data capabilities and have a lot of access to good data. And that's worth a lot to the larger companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Marvelous stuff. So are you still holding all your... Have you sold any or in Cambridge Cognition?
I have not sold a share of my Cambridge Cognition, okay, not a share. So I'm still very much a holder. I think, look, obviously it's always hard to tell people to hold all the way through this, So and I'm not suggesting that. I'm not telling people to do anything. But from my perspective, I like this one because I think that it's one of these small companies that has the potential to become a mid-sized company. Yeah. With the right kind of, it's still risky. No one's kidding. Any small company has its risks, and we talked about some of those risks, revenue concentration, like in the case of IXICO. In Cambridge Cognition's case, that's always a risk I'm looking for. But so far, so good this year. They've landed a couple of bigger contracts on revenues that are already visible. They already have an order book of 6 million. They basically have already made their revenues for the year. They're pretty visible given the contracts they've announced and given the revenues. They're replicating last year's revenues already, and they still have eight or nine, whatever it is, 7 or 8 months to go. So I think they're going to be good on their revenues this year. Might even exceed on the upside if they announce a couple of more big contracts. But what I like is this whole data, this whole digital healthcare component, and I feel that that's a sector that's starting to become hot, and we're seeing it now in the broader these huge acquisitions that are happening. Yeah,
absolutely. Marvelous stuff. COG is the ticker there, and at least now the RSI has come down a bit. The RSI Relative Strength Index was above 70 for a while, which is known as overbought. But at least when the company gets up that level, it starts to really move. But then it gets a bit hot. But it went up to sort of 85, and then recently now it's come back down to 62, which is not too bad. It's back in the cool-off zone, which is, if people are looking to do research, it's a good area here to look at and research into it. Marvellous stuff, and you'd have to give us... So when did you first mention this? It was back in, it was like the 22 pence, and it's now done a 5-6 bagger? Yeah, 6 bagger. There we are, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think that's roughly ballpark.
Right, so next week, Vadim, I want your next 6 bagger, okay?
Yeah, I gotta find one. I'll be sure to tell you.
All right, fella. Speak next week.
Thanks, Justin. Bye.
Okay, it's time for the top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours. They are at 5, Shield Therapeutics, up 5% to 46.5. At 4, Source Bio, 177.5, non-mover. At 3, Oncommune Holdings, up much less than 0.5%, 214. At 2, NFT Investments, down 8% to 3.28. And at 1, Avacta Group, down close to 3% at 248.5. Okay, it's time now for the top 5 most read RNSs. They are as follows. At 5, it's Greatland Gold, result of general meeting. At 4, Bidstack board changes. At 3, Greatland Gold, drilling campaign starts under the Jury JV. At 2, Novocyte, notice of results. And at 1, final results from Avacta. Check that out at voxmarkets.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Muchos apreciados.
The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.